To give a little bit of update and then obviously answer some questions about the incident that occurred, I believe it was Tuesday night, involving the arrest of an individual at the Shell station on the frontage road of IH-35. As I think you all are well aware, this was the result of an operation that the police department was conducting, combating the narcotic sales that take place in the downtown area command. Our officers had observed this individual involved in some hand-to-hand transactions and believed that they were in fact conducting narcotics activity in the area. As they were working to locate the individual to investigate this, they found him. He illegally crossed the roadway and entered into the Shell station over on the frontage road. As you've seen on the video, he enters the store. Our officers go in and they effect the arrest and then bring him to the side of the store, at which point there is an act of resistance, and then the officers end up taking him to the ground. Some of the things we've discussed already. There are videos that are circulating in social media that show one view of this incident. Those videos actually capture our officers removing the individual from the store and then bringing him to the side of the store. There's a gap in those videos that does not capture some of the incidents that took place leading up to the response to resistance and our officers' actions that were then re-shown on that video as she repositioned herself and captured that. We're fortunate that the video has been made available to us from that business. They have a surveillance camera on the side of the business that captured the entire incident once they walked around to the side of the store. And what is visible on that video is that as they get to the side of the store, the suspect in this case tries to pull away from the officers, and our officers, have a hold on him and are trying to get him to move in the direction again to the side of the store, at which point he's able to free himself from the handcuffs. And it's visible on the video that he brings one hand around the right side, the other arm around the left side. Again, he has removed one of his hands from the handcuffs, so he is no longer secured. So there have been a lot of questions about why are these officers yelling, "Put your hands behind your back, put your hands behind your back," because it's obvious when we've brought him out of the store, his hands are secured behind his back. He was able to free himself from the handcuffs, which is something that we'll look into as far as the handcuffing technique that was used in this incident and why he was able to free himself from those. And then what ends up happening is the officers, in an attempt to re-handcuff him and get him back in custody, in overcoming his resistance, they go down to the ground, and that's when the struggle ensues. That is then again captured by the video that's on social media. You see the aftermath of when they get him on the ground and again are struggling to get him back in custody. The suspect in this case was in fact arrested for possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver and found in possession of suspected crack cocaine along with suspected K2 and a large sum of cash. And so he was in fact arrested and booked into the jail on those drug charges along with charges for resisting arrest. So with that, that's kind of an overview of where we're at. As is our typical procedure whenever we have a use of force incident, this incident is currently undergoing a review through the officer's chain of command regarding the use of force in this incident to determine if it was within policy, and then if there are concerns with whether or not it was in policy, then we will forward that over to the Internal Affairs Division to conduct an Internal Affairs investigation. I've spoken as well before about a couple of the incidents that came up with this. Two of the officers were wearing what are called balaclavas, and these are tactical masks that officers wear. And while these are appropriate for use in certain law enforcement situations, such as tactical operations, things of that nature, in this circumstance, the officers were wearing them to conceal their identity because they do undercover work for the department at times, purchasing narcotics and doing other operations. While I understand the importance of that, we have a lot of officers in this department. And if I have officers that need to conceal their identity because they're currently working in some type of an undercover capacity, then those officers don't need to be part of an arrest team. We just need to use other officers. We don't need to have our officers out there on a frontline patrol capacity where they're interacting with this community, having their faces covered. It's not the image of this department, and it's not necessary in this circumstance as well. As you can see at the end of it, one of the officers actually takes off the balaclava, and so it was not necessary in this circumstance, and that's why we've made it perfectly clear to our narcotics division what the expectations are, that in the future, if you have officers that, again, need to conceal their identity because of current operations they're conducting, then those do not need to be the officers that are on the arrest teams. And the other issue was, we obviously had one of the officers wearing a blue Santa hat, I believe it was blue, with the word naughty written on front of it. And while it may just have been an attempt to be festive, given that we're in the Christmas season, it's not appropriate, it's not approved, and we're looking into that as well. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Chief, just talk a little bit about, when videos like this surface on social media, how does it help or hinder what you're trying to do, in this case specifically, because it didn't capture the entire incident?
Sure. I think the videos are important, and everyone needs to understand, as you just stated, that they don't always capture everything. And so I would encourage the community, if you're there and you see something recorded, and if you want to post it to social media, that's absolutely within your rights, but I would also ask that you forward it to us so we can get on it as early as possible and try and capture other images, because oftentimes if these things take place and they're captured on a surveillance video or something like that of a business or a bank or something, those videos overwrite themselves after a period of time. And so if we're not notified early enough, we may lose the opportunity to go back and find other videos that may exist out in the public space to give us a true understanding of what happened.
How soon was it before you were notified of this incident, and when were you notified of this incident, and what all were you told about this? Was it just about use of force? Was it about the other aspects of this, as far as moving around the side and then the removal, etc.?
Sure. This incident was brought up through the chain immediately. I believe the assistant chief over this division was already being notified on Wednesday, the very next day. And so it was working its way through the response to resistance review process. And also we became aware that it was hitting on social media, and that's another way that we get informed at times. And so this was working its way up through the chain of command per protocol, but it was also brought to our attention because of the attention it was getting on social media.
We've heard some people characterize what the officers did as pulling him into an alley. Can you explain the reasons officers moved him from the front of the store to the position he was in?
Sure. So, and what the officers actually noted of the reason for bringing him to the side of the store, and you can notice it on the video, they stated when we brought him out of the store that he was engaging with somebody in the parking lot, that he was yelling at somebody in the parking lot. And I've watched the video several times, and he is definitely yelling, speaking loudly to somebody in the parking lot, although I can't tell off of the view that I've had exactly what he's saying. They did not want him to further engage with that individual. They didn't want to have any type of an interaction, so they felt like moving him over to the side of the store, further away from that individual, whomever that was, would work better. And they also recognized that there was, I think there's a big light on the side of the building, and so that this would still be an area that was well lit. I don't believe that they had searched this suspect yet or had an opportunity to frisk him.
When you watch the cell phone video, it's grainy, it's kind of hard to see exactly which arm is which, and I think, just people out in the audience we're hearing from, when they see it, they say they're on top of him, they have him, why are they excessively punching him? Could you see more clearly, from the security camera, a struggle, throwing all of those punches because he was still waving his arm or resisting?
Sure. So what we can see and what's on the video is the officer's attempts are captured very clearly on trying to get this individual back into custody. And trying to get someone's arms behind their back can be difficult if they don't want you to get their arms behind their back. And so there was somewhat of a struggle to overcome his level of resistance. He was tased, and he was able to push through that as well and continue to keep from getting his arms behind his back. And officers are taught many different techniques throughout their training as far as how do you try and overcome that resistance. And the use of just your own physical force by strikes with your hands, although it looks terrible, it's never going to look positive. It is one of the lowest levels of force that we have. The officers didn't resort to using any type of an impact weapon such as a baton. There were no other types of impact weapons used. They initially started with using just strikes. And again, it is still under review, and I will await the final outcome, but from what I can see, several of the strikes appear to be delivered at the arm that the handcuff is attached to, as again they're trying to free that arm up and get it behind his back. There are officers that are on top of him trying to keep him from getting away, and that can be difficult as well because you're trying to keep weight on the individual to keep them from getting away. At the same time, you have officers trying to get the subject's arms behind their back. What I would say is it does appear to be, it is a little prolonged, but it does appear to be somewhat controlled, as in they were working, it appeared to be, together as far as trying to get his arms behind his back. There were strikes to the face as well, and those will be investigated as well. And that is also taught if you're trying to overcome someone's resistance. Strikes to the face are a higher level use of force, but they're allowable if lower levels of use of force are not working.
So just at the surface, do you have any issues with, or is it too soon to say?
It's too soon to say. I don't want to prejudge something that is already working its way through the systems that we have in place. I haven't read the entire report. Every single officer writes a detailed report on what their part was, and I know people may think, well, you've watched the video, what do you think? It's more complicated than that. You want to read and understand why the officer did what they did. So it would be premature for me to speculate at this point.
The suspect was in handcuffs when he was, before he exited the store, and then was able to wiggle out of handcuffs? Is that what I understood?
Correct. When we removed the suspect from the store, he was handcuffed behind his back, which you can see on that video. And then again, what the surveillance video shows you is when he gets around to the side of the store, he is able to release one of his hands. He's able to pull it from the handcuff. You don't necessarily see the action of him pulling it from the handcuff, but what you see is you see the right arm come around his body, and you can see the handcuffs are now dangling because one is no longer attached, and then his left arm comes around as well, and at one point his left arm ends up over the shoulder of one of our officers.
Is that concerning, or I guess how does that, I don't do this on a regular basis, so how does that happen, or is that a common issue to have someone be able to pull their hand out of a handcuff like it says in the affidavit?
Sure. I would say that it's not common, but it does happen. There are some people that are just much more flexible than others. There are people that can manipulate their hands differently, and sometimes we just don't attach the handcuffs tight enough. We don't want to attach them so tight that they're cutting off circulation, but we also don't need to be attaching them so loose that someone can free themselves from them. So in this case, that's something that we'll look at, and I don't know that we'll be able to determine what happened as far as how he was able to get his hands out, but this is part of training, and we do try to ensure that the officers are tightening them to the level that they need to be tightened to keep the person secured without tightening them so much to cause any type of an injury.
Do you see on that surveillance video that we're probably not going to be able to see the officers falling as it's written in the affidavit?
Yes, as I said earlier, the surveillance video shows everything that happened once they're on the side of the store. It shows them walking around the corner, it shows him attempting to walk away, and then it shows the entire group fall to the ground and then the struggle that ensued at that point.
What is the extent of the suspect's injuries?
I don't know that the suspect, I don't know what level of injuries. I know he was, I know we had him medically evaluated, but I'm not sure that he sustained any injury.
What's the status of the officers that were involved? Are they on leave or guns?
No, we have not changed the duty status of these officers. Again, the case is going through its review process. That is standard protocol for any time we have a use of force, but their duty status has not been changed.
Even for deploying, I guess, when you deploy a taser, is it standard protocol to put someone on administrative leave? No. Or on administrative duty?
No, we do not put anyone on administrative duty for the use of a taser alone.
Take one more question.
Chief, we've seen a lot of negative response to this online. How long do you think it'll take for this to finally get cleared up and a lot of these videos be put onto the web like the one we've seen on Facebook?
Sure. We realize the overwhelming interest and concern over the video that's on Facebook because, again, it's an incomplete picture, and we know that although we say we have another video and it shows this, that there are a lot of folks that want to see it, and we are working towards getting this review done as quickly as possible. My concern is also protecting the review that we need to do, because if the review and the recommendation from the chain of command is that they have concerns over the use of force itself, it may end up being an internal affairs investigation at that point, and I don't want to do anything that could impact that investigation. So the supervisors of this division know the urgency of getting this review done as complete and as quickly as possible, and that's what we're working towards. Thank you all.